U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick seems confident that Trump's tariffs won't be deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, but all may not be as it seems.
So Mark Carney, whom I've met, is central banker. Are you optimistic? Can we make a deal with Canada?
I think it's really complex. I think this is really complex because they have been basically feeding off of us for decades upon decades upon decades, right? They have their socialist regime, and it's basically feeding off of America. I mean, the president calls that out all the time. Why do we make cars in Canada? Why do we do our films in Canada? Come on. So I think the president's going to have, I think it's going to be a fascinating meeting. I'm glad I'm going to be there listening, but it's going to be a fascinating meeting tomorrow. I just don't see how it works out so perfectly.
But you're not going to bust up USMCA. That deadline is next year for the final review.
Correct. So next year is coming. So a lot of things are going to be put into that. So if it's USMCA
compliant, you're okay.
I think for now it's okay, but I think what you should expect to see is a real revisiting of USMCA. I mean, which way is the stock market going? Up, up, up. Which way is the economy going? 3.8 last quarter, estimates of 4.4% this quarter. I mean, the economy is on fire because of Donald Trump's economy is one that says tariffs, come on, build in America. You know, the president's been saying north of $15 trillion coming to build in America. That's going to grow our economy more than 4%. It could grow our economy more than 5%. I mean, these are numbers no one's ever thought are possible for America, and it's driven by Donald Trump's trade and tariff agenda.
In all seriousness, this case matters, I believe, for more than any other reason, not only economically, national security. How do you think it went today?
Oh, this is the Super Bowl. This was the Super Bowl of trade, right? Trade, and this was it. The only thing missing was walk-on and walk-off music and a halftime show. I mean, this was it. And there were fireworks all the time. But think of some of these questions, like Justice Kavanaugh says, imagine a meeting in the Oval Office with the president where, and this was his cross-examination of their lawyer, and he says, you've said he could embargo, he could cut off trade with any country. And their lawyer said, I agree. He goes, imagine telling the president in the Oval Office, sir, you can blow up trade with this country. And he goes, that seems too much. Can I put a tariff on him and do a little less? And they say, no, sir, you can't. And Justice Kavanaugh says, that seems like a very odd donut to me. I mean, how could you let that happen? It just didn't make sense. The justices were on the president's side. You're hearing it here from me. President Trump is going to win this case. The president is using these tariffs. This is by a justice. The president is using these tariffs to end the war in Russia and Ukraine, right? He's told India, stop buying oil. If you take these powers away from the president, he can't make the world and the United States of America a safer place. I think the justices know it. They know the law. They went over the words. It was crystal clear if you sat through the second half of today. And a lot of those articles today were written in the first half. You listened to the second half today, you left like I did, very confident that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is going to win this case because these powers protect America.
Do you think tariffs help or hurt prices for consumers in this country?
I think that the tariffs help consumers because we are able to, if you go back and look, we have brought down the budget deficit. And MIT came out with a study that said that 42% of the great inflation was caused by the big deficit spending. So as you bring down deficit spending, inflation will come down. And the tariffs, right now, we take in substantial tariff income. Over time, that will rebalance as the factories move to the U.S., and that will become the corporate income or wage income. And by bringing down the budget deficit, we are bringing down inflation.
You're an incredibly well-respected financial mind, have been for many years. It's why you got the job, because so many people respect the way you think about the economy and money. Do you, as a rule, though, even going back to your career in finance, believe that tariffs are a tax on consumers? Do they cost consumers money?
I do not believe that tariffs are a tax on consumers.
It is outrageous that people think tariffs are inflation. Remember, what inflation means is I'm going to go buy this tie, and I know the tie is going to cost $30. But next year, I think the tie is going to cost $33. And the year after, it's going to cost $36. So I have in my head 10% inflation, right? If this tie is made in Italy, and it's going to cost $31.50 now. So what? It's not going to change next year, the year after, the year after. And if I want to buy an American tie, I can buy an American tie. That's not inflation. And what everybody's going to learn is this is not inflation. You have energy prices down, and he's going to keep them down as we get lower and lower of drill, baby, drill. That's a big number, right? That's driving down the cost of all of us in our pocketbooks. Groceries are down. I'm telling you, inflation is not part of our future.
I think this is a question for the other side as well. It's two-facing. Yes, of course, tariffs and dealings with foreign powers, but the vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress. So to have the president's foreign affairs power trump that basic power for Congress seems to me to kind of at least neutralize between the two powers, the executive power and the legislative power.
Let me say two things in response to that. First, the notion that the taxes are all borne by Americans and are not borne by foreign producers whose goods are imported is empirically, there's no basis for that in the record. It's actually a mix.
Well, who pays the tariffs? If a tariff is imposed on automobiles, who pays them?
Typically there'd be regardless of who the importer of record is, there'd be a contract that would go along the sort of line of transfer that would allocate the tariff, and there'd be different. Sometimes the foreign producer would pay them. Sometimes the importer would bear the cost. The importer could be an American, could be a foreign company. A lot of times it's a wholly owned American subsidiary of a foreign corporation. So it gets allocated. The empirical estimates range from like 30% to 80% of like how much is borne by American
it's
citizens.
been suggested that the tariffs are responsible for significant reduction in our deficit. I would say that's raising revenue domestically.
There certainly is an incidental and collateral effect of the tariffs that they do raise revenue, but it's very important that they are regulatory tariffs, not revenue-raising tariffs. And the way you can see this, I think, if you look at this policy is by far the most effective if nobody ever pays the tariffs.
Trump seems keen to pressure SCOTUS into ruling in favor of letting the tariffs stand, as he keeps touting these totally unapproved, highly unlikely $2,000 checks as a way to sweeten the bitter pill of healthcare premiums skyrocketing and tariffs raising the costs of basically everything. But there's absolutely no legal basis for this sort of stimulus check, and seemingly no concrete plans to actually make it a reality. Howard Lutnick, on the other hand, may be less worried about the very likely scenario of SCOTUS declaring the tariffs unconstitutional. Lutnick made his money running the investment bank Cantor Fitzgerald, stepping down to take the role as Trump's Commerce Secretary. That company, which is now run by his sons, is offering clients a way to cash in if the tariffs get struck down. And if that sounds like a massive conflict of interest, Senate Finance Committee Ranking Member Ron Wyden and Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee Ranking Member Elizabeth Warren thought so too. They wrote to Brandon Lutnick, CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald and Howard Lutnick's son, saying, Cantor has created a litigation finance product that places the company in the position of betting that courts will strike down Trump's tariffs. Given that one of the purported architects of President Trump's tariff policy is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, your father, and the former chairman and CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, LP, the firm's actions raise obvious conflict of interest and insider dealing concerns. If the Supreme Court rules Trump's tariffs unlawful, companies that paid import duties could apply for refunds. And in a letter seen by Wired, a Cantor rep explained that the firm would trade the rights to those refunds for just 20 to 30% of what companies paid, meaning Cantor could pocket 70 to 80% profit if the tariffs collapse in court. Publicly, he's been calling tariffs a huge win for the U.S. economy and totally above board. But privately, his family's firm is setting itself up to make an absolute killing if the whole thing falls apart. The grifting truly never ends in this administration.